It is broad daylight in Minneapolis. Bystanders are filming. Multiple videos from multiple angles capturing the same fatal moment. And yet, almost immediately, America splits in two. One version says this was a domestic terror attack. A woman weaponized her car. A federal officer was simply doing his job. Another version says this was reckless, lethal force, a predictable, avoidable tragedy, a consequence of an aggressive federal crackdown imposed on a city that did not ask for it. Same videos, same facts, radically different truths. I've covered wars, revolutions, and collapsing states. But what unsettles me here is not just the violence. It's that even video evidence no longer anchors reality. If you want to understand where American democracy is heading, stay with me. Because this story is not about one shooting. It's about how truth itself has become contested territory. And to see why, we need to step back and understand the problem this moment exposes. This moment forces a hard question. What exactly are Americans arguing about here? On the surface, it is a shooting. A federal immigration officer, a woman in a car, a split-second decision. But beneath that, this is a fight over authority. Who has the right to enforce the law? Who controls the narrative when force is used? And who gets to define what public safety actually means? Federal officials say immigration enforcement is a national mandate. Local leaders say their communities are being turned into battlegrounds. Both sides claim legitimacy. Both sides claim the law. Both sides claim the moral high ground. And when those claims collide, facts alone are no longer enough to settle the dispute. To understand how America reached this point, we have to look at the path that led here. Minnesota did not become the center of this conflict overnight. For years, immigration enforcement has moved in waves. Periods of restraint, then sudden surges. This surge followed political pressure. It followed rhetoric aimed at immigrant communities. And it followed scandals that weakened state leadership. Federal authorities increased their presence. Operations expanded. Tensions rose quietly, day by day. At the same time, trust eroded between cities and Washington, between law enforcement and local residents. This pattern is familiar in American history. Aggressive enforcement produces resistance. Resistance produces escalation. And escalation eventually produces a flashpoint. In Minneapolis, that flashpoint arrived in broad daylight, and once it did, there was no going back. The first crisis was not the gunshot. The first crisis was the story that followed. Within hours, two versions hardened, each one complete, each one incompatible with the other. Federal leaders described a terror threat. A car turned into a weapon, a justified response. Local leaders described recklessness, a failure of judgment, a tragedy waiting to happen. These accounts did not evolve. They calcified, and once positions hardened, the investigation itself became political. When federal agencies withdrew from state cooperation, the signal was unmistakable. This would not be a shared search for truth. It would be parallel realities. And that choice changed everything. This is where the deeper mechanism reveals itself. America is no longer just divided by ideology. It is divided by information systems. The same video does not produce the same meaning. It produces confirmation. Every frame becomes a weapon. Every pause becomes evidence. Every interpretation reinforces prior belief. Power no longer depends only on force. It depends on narrative dominance. Who speaks first? Who sounds authoritative? Who aligns with your identity? In that system, accountability becomes optional because truth is no longer common ground. And once truth fractures, institutions follow, which leads directly to the second crisis. The second crisis is normalization. This shooting was not isolated. It fits a pattern. Enforcement actions involving vehicles, escalating force, repeated outcomes. Yet each incident is treated as exceptional, unrelated, unavoidable. Over time, the extraordinary becomes routine, and routine violence stops shocking the system. Protests grow, warnings are issued, National Guards are placed on standby. The state prepares for unrest, instead of preventing the conditions that create it. And in that environment, everyone braces for the next spark. But the real damage is quieter. If you live in one of these communities, this is no longer abstract. You watch the same video as everyone else, but you see yourself in it. You hear officials describe a stranger's character. Before an investigation ends, before facts are settled, you feel the weight of power speaking about your city, your streets, your safety, and you begin to understand something unsettling. The system is not built to protect your trust. It is built to manage your reaction. If this story matters to you, if you want clarity instead of noise, this is the moment to stay engaged. Because what happens next affects far more than one city. Globally, this matters because America sets precedent. When federal power overrides local authority, others take note. When enforcement is justified by electoral mandate alone, democracy quietly narrows. Allies watch internal cohesion weaken. Adversaries watch institutions strain. And the message travels. Law can be enforced without consent. Truth can be optional. Force can be framed. That is not just an American lesson. It is a global one. And it shapes what comes next. The future now branches into three paths. In the best case, investigations regain credibility, oversight returns, and shared standards of truth are slowly rebuilt. In the middle path, the system holds, but trust does not. Each incident deepens division. Each response becomes more defensive. And in the worst case, force becomes policy by default. Narrative replaces accountability. And democracy functions, but only on paper. History tells us something important. Societies rarely collapse from one crisis. They erode from unresolved ones, and this story is not finished. If you want to understand where this leads and how power is changing in modern democracies, stay with me, because the next chapter is already forming.